moving around inside the cargo van.
Yeah, and even as we say that as well, vehicles are kind of restaging, moving back a bit. It leads you to question, are they about to move in? A lot of movement here with officers on the ground. Bruce, why do they typically do that? We're seeing a lot of vehicles back off here.
To case in point with the drone, most law enforcement agencies, SWAT operations, have now used the drone to get a very safe observational platform. So that's what you see. Torrance PD does have one. The Sheriff's Department has deployed it. Torrance PD has deployed it before, so that's what they're doing. To your second question, they are moving the regular officers out of position, and those officers will be replaced by SWAT operators, just because they're well-versed in this type of situation.
And what will those SWAT operators be doing next, possibly, as they move into their location?
They practice this. So they have plan A, B, and C. And what they're going to do is they probably will deploy some sort of less lethal weaponry to break the window of the van. A van is a very complex situation because there's not many windows like a vehicle or a car. You've got the front windows inside, driver's side, and that's about it. So, and the front windshield is very problematic to break through. So they will probably deploy something like a pepper ball glass shattering round, which they have, and that will break the window. And then they will introduce maybe a CS gas, pepper spray, or tear gas into the vehicle to get the suspect to leave.
You mentioned breaking the window. It's hard to tell from this perspective, but the driver's side rear view mirror on this van, it's hard to tell if that is shattered or not. It does appear that the glass is broken. I want to thank our photographer on the ground for putting on the extender there, but that sure looks like it's shattered, whether it's the rear view mirror or if it's a reflection of the front windshield.
Yeah, it's certainly taking some damage, possibly from that Bearcat hitting it head on. We're not quite sure what led up to the vehicles being positioned in this way.
And was there a pursuit? We don't have that answer. We questioned it. We didn't know if there was some type of pursuit leading to this location. If that is the case, we are not aware of that, but maybe that would help explain that situation, that maybe some type of shots, non-lethal, were shot earlier to break that window, or from the impact, as Irene mentioned. So just wanted to point that out, since we could at least see it from our ground camera. Those officers, the SWAT team, on standby, waiting to make their move. A little concerning that in the distance behind this Bearcat, you can see members of the public that are still kind of in the vicinity of the area. I saw as we were pushing in that there were plainclothes citizens that were kind of in the area somewhat watching what was going on. Not the best location to be in, knowing the risk of what we're looking at here, as officers are essentially waiting to make their move. The time right now is 11:42 as we are streaming live here on Eyewitness News. We are watching and standing by for a news conference from the city of Monterey Park. That is not occurred yet, of course. You can see the podium. They were initially scheduled to give us an update at 11:30. That has been pushed back to 11:45. If that is on schedule, that is now just 2 minutes away. As I speak, I get an update. 11:50 is the new update, so we are 7 minutes away from that potentially occurring.
Bruce, I have a question. I mean, earlier we were talking about how we didn't want any of the officers getting too close to the vehicle because we value human life. We value also the suspect's life at this point in time. But it seems like there is almost a change in the body language here, where officers before were shielded behind doors, they had their guns drawn, they had the canines ready, but now it feels like they're a lot closer to the vehicle. They're simply walking around. It doesn't seem like they feel as though there was as much of a threat as before.
Do you think that he may be incapacitated if he's in the van?
He might be. They may have heard something that may have led them to believe that the suspect may have taken their own life. I mean, that's a possibility, too. And that's one of the things that they've planned for also. The other thing, too, is they've got the suspect pinned in. He is not going anywhere. So in this case, for the suspect to, we believe, will have a weapon or may have an additional weapon, it's kind of hard for him to engage the officers with a van that has solid panels on basically 3/4 of it. So that's where the posture changes a little bit.
We now have the third Bearcat arriving on scene. This one specifically is with the LA County Sheriff's Department. But as you mentioned a moment ago, Bruce, a lot of these agencies, when it comes to SWAT, they train and work together.
Yeah, the Sheriff's Department is the lead agency for SWAT tactics. They even train Torrance. They train Beverly Hills PD, other agencies, and including the FBI and the Secret Service have trained with them.
And certainly that collaboration to make sure that all agencies, when responding to these incidents, have the same approach. And then when they come together in a situation like this, they're all on the same page, and that goes a far way.
Yes, it does, even to the point where the verbiage and the wording of commands and things are universal.
Very interesting to see what they will be doing next. They're huddled in behind that Bearcat, which is very close to the vehicle itself. It looks like Torrance PD has also backed away from that specific location. Again, we're about 5 minutes away or so from hearing an update on this barricade situation with the cargo van here in Torrance, but the press conference should be happening out of Monterey Park at the City Hall facility there in just a few minutes.
I don't know. The more I see here, it kind of seems surprising that they could hold a press conference when we are unresolved on the situation on the left of your screen. If we don't know for sure what is inside the van, I just question what type of information law enforcement from Monterey Park is going to be able to provide. Does that strike you as odd, and maybe this may continue to be pushed back? Bruce, what do you think?
Yeah, my guess is they are going to continue to push it back until this operation has concluded. You can't, once you open the door, so to speak, and say, well, law enforcement officers from Torrance and the Sheriff's Department are conducting a felony traffic stop on a suspect vehicle, and the suspect has barricaded himself in. Well, we all know where the next questions are going to come, and we don't have answers to them. So my guess is, being a former PIO, I would push this back until this operation is concluded.
Yeah, it was just interesting to see that they had scheduled that press conference at 11:30, and now they're pushing it back further and further. And as we wait for this this situation here with the suspect in the van to conclude.
At this point, at 11:47, I got to assume that most of our viewers, including here in our streaming coverage, are somewhat up to speed on what's been occurring. So many people get those breaking news alerts and woke up to the news this morning. But as we are now some 13 hours into the investigation, multiple hours into our live coverage, you got to assume a lot of people are up to speed here, but all of this stemming from the overnight or late night mass shooting in Monterey Park, in which 10 individuals were killed, another 10 more that were injured in that shooting, and then a secondary incident that was essentially thwarted in the city of Alhambra, both of them being dance studios where people were out celebrating, unknown if they were competing, but celebrating with dance last night on a Saturday night when all of this unfolded.
And at the dance studio in Alhambra, witnesses say they saw the suspect leaving in that white cargo van that we were seeing on the left side of our screen on our live pictures. So that is the vehicle that they were describing to law enforcement. Something of note, we just got word as well that the press conference has actually been pushed back even more to noon. So we're waiting for more details again as the law enforcement tries to figure out what they want to do in this situation here.
And perhaps waiting for these updates. No doubt they're getting information fed to them, and oftentimes we know that they do watch news reports as well to get the information as far as what they're seeing. Someone there from the Sheriff's Department was speaking, just testing the mic. Yeah, just testing the mic to make sure everything is good to go there. But no doubt at this point, as we suspected, things going to continue to push back until we get all of the factual information confirmed from this location in Torrance. You can see the broad perimeter here that has been set up in the area of Sepulveda and Hawthorne in the city of Torrance. And speaking to that impact, that we talked about earlier, the fact that this isn't just one community now, you have, a wide-ranging area that's been impacted by this event, from the South Bay all the way over to the initial shooting location in the San Gabriel Valley.
Yeah, Monterey Park, and then it moved to Alhambra, and now we are in Torrance this morning. We've just gotten word that Air 7 has reestablished its shot right above, so we can get a better perspective of the Bearcat vehicles surrounding the cargo van and the SWAT members on the other side of that Bearcat. We aren't, again, seeing much movement coming from inside that white vehicle. And
the video there on the right side of your screen is the LA County Sheriff's helicopter that is on scene in Torrance. So we were talking about the distance between the two investigations. So instead of driving, they were able to land that helicopter, at least get some boots on the ground as far as the Sheriff's Department response as all of this develops and unfolds. Certainly, Bruce, I would agree with you. You have far more experience, but you know, the tone and the stance, the posture of these SWAT members leads you to believe that if the suspect is in this white van, that he could be incapacitated, because you don't have any guns drawn anymore. The officers that were closer have moved back. The deputies and SWAT members that are behind that Bearcat, you know, have their backs to the vehicle. It just leads you to believe that the sense of urgency has diminished a bit, and you wonder, how do they know that? How do they know what's happening inside that van?
Yeah, you're 100% correct, and that's the posture that we're seeing from the SWAT officers and the general law enforcement in the area. The problematic part comes in now. They do have to make entry into that van. They do have to have paramedics, which are part of the SWAT team makeup, to go in and possibly render aid to the suspect if he is still alive, or even if he is, you know, deceased. They still have to go do that. And the SWAT officers have that. And
we saw them use that drone, that Torrance PD used a drone to see what was inside the vehicle without getting too close with an officer or a canine at all. So that was interesting to watch the body language change right after using that drone.
Yeah, they may have seen something on the drone footage, which leads them to believe the suspect is incapacitated and or deceased in some way, shape, or manner. And so that is why the posture changed, as you just said.
And the timing is interesting because it lines up. It makes sense. I want to say it was probably about 90 minutes after the Sheriff's Department revealed that they were looking possibly for a white cargo van that they located this one, which gives, you know, agencies enough time for that be on the lookout to go out, for agencies around Southern California to look out for a suspicious white cargo van, and around that time, enough time for that information to disseminate to other agencies. That's when this van was located so many miles away.
Yeah, they put out a bolo, be on the lookout. It goes out agency-wide, all of Southern California, and I wouldn't even be surprised if they were about to put it out on the freeway signs also for the public to help them apprehend the suspect.
You have to assume that they had more than just the white van to pinpoint this one, because we said earlier, it's somewhat of a generic vehicle. There are so many of them. Earlier this morning from Air 7 HD, we saw multiple white cargo vans within the vicinity of the actual shooting that were still on scene. So maybe there was a license plate that was captured somewhat on surveillance that helped pinpoint that, yeah, this is the one we're looking for.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. This just goes to the credit of investigators for the Sheriff's Department working with their federal partners and their local county partners of just how they got the information out so quickly and so accurately to possibly end this with this vehicle and the suspect.
Now, if the suspect is incapacitated in the van here, what is the next move that SWAT members will do?
Well, they have to go in. There's no way to candy coat that. That means that they will break one of the windows if it's not already broken, as what we talked about. They may deploy a canine into that window to rouse the suspect, so to speak, or to get a response, and then go from there. That canine will be supported by SWAT officers who are heavily armed, because the canine I know people don't want to hear this, but the canine is a law enforcement tool, and there have been canines that have sacrificed their life in operations just like that for their handlers.
Yeah, we've seen that happen. It's equally heartbreaking, and a lot of people typically get upset about that. But
and we certainly hope that won't be the case here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they will have to make entry into that vehicle. Maybe they might use the third Bearcat to maybe rip a door off that vehicle, attach some sort of chain and hook to give them an operational viewing and area where they can possibly enter safely.
And Bruce Thomas, at this point, it's almost like nothing would surprise us. We've seen situations with prior pursuits with a suspect of tear gas and non-lethal or even lethal shots going into a vehicle, and we thought that the suspect must have been killed, and sure enough, the door opens and the guy walks out. That was a case roughly a month or two ago. So even if you think one thing, until it's done and in custody and that door opens, you just don't know for sure. Can you speak to that possibility, until they open that door?
All right, we might have lost Bruce here, but again, we are waiting for new information in about 5 minutes or so with that press conference possibly happening at noon. Might give us a clearer picture of what's happening in Torrance right now with this scene. We are also hoping to find out, who the suspect is and why they did this.
Sure, we have the photo of this suspect that has been identified. His name has not been released. There's that image again, 3 images, we believe, from the same location, just different angles of this suspect, an Asian man. Earlier in the morning, he was described as being up to 50 years old, and certainly looks like that age range would be appropriate. His name not released, and it's unclear, for what it's worth, which location these surveillance images came from. There were 2 locations of concern. One was the initial mass shooting location in Monterey Park at the Star Dance Hall. That was the first location. The second location was in Alhambra, where the suspect was apparently disarmed by patrons. So we don't know where these images came from, but the alert went out that this is the guy they're looking for.
And we'd like to bring in now former LA County Sheriff Jim McDonnell on the phone with us this morning. You are watching our coverage here of this barricade situation with the suspect possibly in this white cargo van. What do you make of this scene unfolding?
I've been listening for a few minutes. I heard Bruce Thomas's assessment, and I would agree with that the posture taken by the Special Enforcement Bureau operators at the scene, the fact that they don't have the side doors secured, but they do have the vehicle secured, would indicate that a very strong possibility the suspect is inside, incapacitated. So as we watch this whole thing play out, there's a lot going on behind the scenes, both here at this tactical scene, but also on the investigative follow-up, looking for any additional information that they can get that could potentially tie any additional suspects into this case, and of course doing the very very time-consuming and investigative steps that are so important in today's investigation that just a handful of years ago that would not be undertaken. The technical side, the computer side, the cyber piece to this whole thing, potentially. There's a lot going on. And then, of course, at the scene, all of the closed-circuit TV cameras that might be there and other technical aids that they may have in place in the city to be able to help identify somebody who was at the scene and then be able to do an appropriate level of follow-up.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a great recap on what we've been discussing throughout the morning, the social media aspect, the surveillance cameras, and we know that the Monterey Park area and even where the shooting occurred, the building where the shooting occurred, we saw multiple cameras pointing down on the parking lot, on the entrance of that facility. Former Sheriff Jim McDonald, this is, of course, a department that you led just over 4 years ago for a 4-year term. And knowing that the Sheriff's Homicide Bureau is leading the investigation, what kind of confidence do you have that they're going to wrap this up and they're going to get it right?
They're as good as you can get. The Homicide Bureau are among the best anywhere. Likewise, with the Special Enforcement Bureau, are handling the tactical scene, and Homicide Bureau is going to take advantage of all of the resources they have from a technical standpoint. The experts from the side of the crime scene investigation and follow-up, cyber experts. The beauty of being a large department and the largest sheriff's department in the nation is that you have resources available to you to do anything that can possibly be done to further the progress of the case.
Now, we've had a lot of agencies involved in this case overnight and through the morning hours. We've had the FBI also involved in this, and we see progress with this investigation and a possible suspect being apprehended within hours of this happening. Can you talk about the resources that are shared between these agencies and how helpful it can be in an investigation like this?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely critical. When you look at the county of Los Angeles, it's 88 cities plus all of the massive unincorporated areas. 42 of those cities are contracting the LA County Sheriff's Department for their policing services. But there's an awful lot of different jurisdictions involved in anything like this that happens, particularly when you have a particularly heinous crime like this committed with the suspect on the loose after the incident. Everybody focuses on this. There's a potential grave threat to the community and surrounding areas. So everybody, it's all hands on deck, and everybody's focused on apprehending this suspect, identifying, isolating, and apprehending the suspect. And as we see here, the federal resources, state resources, as well as all of our partner agencies in the region brought whatever they could to bear on this. And here we have, like you said, within a dozen hours, the suspect has been located, and that is playing itself out now there for a conclusion.
Sure. And for our viewers who are tuning in here on our live streaming coverage, the perspective of this being the 5th mass shooting in the U.S. this year, but the largest since Uvalde, Texas last year. So certainly on the mass shooting scale, this is a significant one. Bruce Thomas was speaking minutes ago about the collaboration on the training side with these SWAT members. We have both Torrance police, and then we saw moments ago a Bearcat and personnel from the sheriff's SWAT arrive. How well does that collaboration work? How familiar are you with it?
Oh, yeah. No, very, very familiar. And the agencies do train together as much as possible. The 3 largest agencies in the county all have a SWAT team, LAPD, LA Sheriffs, and Long Beach, as well as many of the agencies that are more medium-sized. They also have part-time SWAT elements that they're able to respond to certain incidents in their own cities. And so we have people who put a lot of time, energy, and effort into being as good as they can be in this specialty, and it certainly does save lives. Their primary focus is to get to a scene, to try as best they can to isolate it, to ensure that there are no community members around the scene that are still in harm's way. They're evacuated. And then once they have it isolated and the situation under control from that standpoint, and then every attempt is made to de-escalate the situation, talk the suspect out of his position of advantage if he's barricaded, and be able to take them peacefully into custody. But they prepare for the worst and hope for the best and work toward the best resolution in all of these situations.
And speaking about making sure that all the community members remain safe around this area, we were just taking a look at some video here of that drone that they were using to monitor the vehicle. Can you talk about the technology like this drone that is so helpful when it comes to a barricade situation?
Absolutely. I recall back when I was sheriff in 2015, we introduced drones to be able to be useful to us in situations like this, tactical situations, in bomb squad situations, and in trying to locate lost hikers and missing persons in the Angeles National Forest area, and there was quite a bit of pushback at that time. And I think we've seen a transition in the public realizing the value that a drone can bring in being able to safely get eyes on a tactical scene, or in the case of an explosive device, the device itself, without putting our personnel in harm's way unnecessarily. In this case, a drone, I believe this is probably being operated by Torrance. Torrance has one of the premier drone operations that I've seen. They use drones on a regular basis to assist in responding to patrol calls as well, and they're very well versed in it and have been at it for some time. And so I think we're going to see more and more drone usage throughout the United States as we see the value of being able to effectively to get a view of what's going on, to be able, in this case, possibly to be able to look in the windshield or the side windows, and the rest of it is all you can see, not available. It's all panel. It's a panel truck, so there's no windows in the back. But to be able to see if the person is inside, if they are, and what condition they're in before they approach personally. So I'm sure that they have already made their assessment based on the posture here, that they're now going to move methodically into a position where they can exhaust all questions as to the condition of the suspect, as well as other additional suspects potentially in this location. Once they do that, then they'll make the approach. If they were to see that there were additional suspects in the van, that certainly would change the whole posture, and it would become more of a potentially a rescue effort at that point.
Sure.
Interesting. You see the bomb squad just pulled up here, and they're going to make sure then that the vehicle is not booby-trapped in any way, and to again, look at all potential outcomes to this, and look at all possible threats, and be able to run those to ground before they do the actual approach.
I was going to ask you about the response of the bomb squad unit that arrived on scene just a moment ago. Certainly you see that, and you jump to the conclusion that there are explosives, but they even do more than just that, and they do work in collaboration with the SWAT units. Is that correct?
They do. We join them all together as part of the Special Operations Bureau or Special Enforcement Bureau. And they work together very closely, and particularly in situations where they have to breach a door in a location that's potentially barricaded, or to be able to effect a rescue in somewhere where they have to use explosives to gain entry. Certainly the expertise of the bomb squad is employed at that time.
It was also very interesting to watch the drone hover close to the van, but very close to the ground as well, checking to see all angles of this van to see if there was any possible planted explosives as well. So that was fascinating to watch the drone be a very helpful tool to these team members out here. Yeah,
it's very, very maneuverable. The camera setup on these devices is very clear, high definition cameras. And so they have an ability to be able to do a very thorough and quick assessment using these devices.
Yeah, and you spoke so well to the debate that occurred years ago when you were serving as the Los Angeles County Sheriff about drones. I mean, there was even outrage from some folks in the community about this, with concerns and complaints that, drones were going to be invading our privacy and looking in our windows, and that is not the case.
Yeah, not at all. The only windows they'll look in are in a situation like this, whether it's a vehicle or a residence or a business, to be able to see what the needs are for the tactical situation at hand. And certainly if there is someone injured inside, they get that information, and they were able then to make it a rapid entry and be able to pull that person out, get them to the medical help they may need. And so it's, to me, it's just a tremendous lifesaver in the situations where it's used appropriately.
Oh, absolutely. We got good perspective there just a moment ago from Air 7 HD on the broad perimeter that's unfolding here in this area of Torrance. Sepulveda and Hawthorne is the general intersection where this parking lot is located. Looking at everything that you're seeing in this coverage, do you think we are minutes away, moments away from them moving in? What are they waiting for?
Yeah, I don't have any specific knowledge or information more than you do at this point. But just watching the posture, they're going to take their time. It does not appear that there's any sense of urgency. They're going to do it thoroughly and make sure that every eventuality or potential is looked at and exhausted before they make that approach to the vehicle. And so as you see additional resources being brought into place, it looks like, based on this latest one, that they're going to be here for some period of time.
And may I ask you, correct me if I'm wrong, the Sheriff's Homicide Bureau, that is stationed within the city of Monterey Park. Am I correct? And if so, can you speak to that community? What's happened to them with this incident?
Certainly, yeah. The Homicide Bureau is based in the city of Monterey Park, and certainly has that attachment with the local residents. So when they rolled out on this last night, I'm sure this certainly had some special meaning for them being so close to their headquarters, but also the relationships that the Sheriff's Department and the Monterey Park Police Department enjoy with the community members in Monterey Park and the surrounding areas is a very strong one. And so earlier we saw the Chester Chong, the president of the Chinese Chamber of Commerce, out and speaking to this issue, and certainly you can tell by the way that it's being viewed by the public that a tremendous amount of concern, quite a bit of fear, and the Asian American community has been through some very difficult times in the past couple of years. So again, this on top of all of that, I'm sure is very shaking, very unsettling to the whole community.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of Asian Americans who are celebrating Lunar New Year this weekend, not just at Monterey Park, but at events all across Southern California, are very torn by this. They don't know whether to mourn or celebrate the Lunar New Year because of this shooting that happened overnight. We do know there was a few cancellations. The Citadel outlets even canceled their celebration in light of this and in respect for those victims, but it's been the community has been shaken to the core and outraged from what I am seeing online, that there has been, we don't know for sure if this was, the motivation, if it was a hate crime or if it was something more personal or a domestic dispute. That has not been fully confirmed, but regardless, this was a very heavily predominant Asian American community with 65% Asian American, and it really shocks them to the core when something like this happens, especially so close to that Lunar New Year festival, just a street away. But still so many questions as to why that suspect decided to shoot in that dance studio as opposed to the Lunar New Year celebration. Thankfully, he didn't, but this is just a tragedy all around, and the Asian American community is certainly heartbroken this morning.
Absolutely. A number of motivations have been put forward with this morning as to why this occurred. I don't think we'll really know until the investigation plays itself out in more depth. But from what we've heard and what we see often in these mass shootings, that it is somebody who feels that they've been disrespected for whatever reason, and they in their own way feel that they're going to strike out at anybody potentially responsible, or even anybody who may represent somebody they feel is responsible in any way. And so when you try and look at these things, it's hard to be able to rationalize what happened, because it's not a rational decision, obviously. And so this individual's background and all of the things that led up to this will be looked at in great detail as the investigation continues.
What is that process like, looking into the background of a suspect?
And I don't know what the story is on this particular individual, but oftentimes, you'll look at somebody's social media history, you'll look at their presence online, what they've been involved in, what they're interested in, queries that they've made, web searches, but also communications with others, and have they expressed themselves in a way that it was threatening? What could have been learned? What should have been learned? Who else knew what was going on in this regard? And so certainly, and I can't speak to this case, but one of the things you often look for is, was this person tied in with other people? Is this something larger than what we're seeing here in this individual case? And so all of those things will be looked at, and any leads exhausted in that way. And like you mentioned earlier, we have some of the best and brightest working on this case with tremendous amount of experience and an ability to work with our federal, state, and local partners in a way that I think could be a model for the rest of the country.
Yeah, on that note, not only as a former sheriff do you have that perspective to what occurs in Monterey Park, prior to that, you were the police chief in Long Beach, much like Robert Luna. And so you worked, I got to assume, in collaboration with Torrance PD, being a neighboring city there. So you're well aware of what they are capable of when it comes to these investigations.
Yeah, very true. In the county of Los Angeles, we have the Los Angeles County Police Chiefs Association, which brings together chiefs on a monthly basis to discuss trends, patterns, different things that you're seeing, but also the ability to be able to share resources and to be able to network. And when you need something, to have that type of relationship where one phone call will get you the resources you need to supplement your own. You know, you can't deploy enough people for something that is a very big incident in any individual city. So it's so critical that we have the partnerships that we have throughout the law enforcement community. And I've been told by people from around the country and around the world that Southern California really leads the way in that collaborative approach to dealing with major crisis. We, fortunately or unfortunately, have a lot of practice in doing that with all of the various types of natural disasters and other major events that we have here in the region. So we have some of the best and brightest, and they get to practice their trade on a very frequent basis. So, you know, we're thankful to have this type of expertise here locally.
And I was reminded that prior to your time as LA County Sheriff and then the Long Beach Police Department, you also served with the LAPD. You've been all over, tons of experience. The Los Angeles Police Department, more than 9,000 sworn officers currently. Monterey Park has 75 sworn officers, certainly a smaller city of the 88 that you referenced in the county. That being said, what kind of toll does this put on a small police department? Clearly, we have the assistance from the Sheriff's Department this morning on the investigation, but there's still got to be a big weight on this department.
Oh, absolutely. This department, it is a relatively small area that is being policed by a police department of 75. But any given time, there's a small fraction of that number out and available on the streets to respond for calls for service. So when this event happened last night, local resources were clearly overwhelmed and needed the support from surrounding agencies, the Sheriff's Department, and others, our state and local our state and federal partners as well. And everybody, no questions asked, when something like this happens, they respond. They get in, they get up, get in the car, and head to work. And not knowing how long they're going to be there before they come home, they're going to be there until the resolution of the case, in an effort to be able to protect the community. In a case like this, as I mentioned earlier, it is so egregious, and you have somebody who has taken so many lives and hurt so many others, and has the ability to continue on that type of behavior. That person has to be identified very quickly and taken into custody to protect the community. And that's what everybody is focused on and very much committed to.
Absolutely. I wonder if you can speak to this. The Monterey Park Police Chief, Scott Weiss, I believe his name is, he spoke earlier during the 8:30 news conference, and he said on the record that this is not connected to the Lunar New Year festival that was ongoing in Monterey Park earlier in the evening. That event was scheduled to wrap up at 9 p.m. Granted, this occurred within an hour after the event, less than a block away. What do you think? Can you say it's not connected definitively, or is that kind of still on the table? You have to assume that there were people who maybe spilled from one event to the next event, and the proximity of the two is just so incredibly close.
Yeah, I mean, at first blush, you would assume that you know that there would be a connection between the crime and the event, bringing so many people together in a relatively small piece of real estate. But Chief Weiss must have information that would indicate to him to that level of certainty that this was separate and apart from that in order for him to have said that this morning. So there's a lot that they don't feel comfortable, I'm sure, going out with at this early stage in the investigation, but that they will speak to in greater detail later.
Okay, we appreciate your insight on this, Jim. We do want to have you on standby real quick, but we want to throw to our reporter who is on the scene right now, Eyewitness News reporter Sophie Flay, live at that scene in Torrance. Sophie, what can you tell us?
Irene, we just got here, but as you guys know, this standoff has been going on for over an hour. You can see behind me those two Bearcats sandwiching the white cargo van. You can't see the cargo van from this angle, but we do know, police have confirmed that the suspect is inside the cargo van. And LA County Sheriff Robert Luna just, about a half hour ago released photos of that suspect. And you can see over here, this has brought out a huge crowd. Sepulveda Boulevard and Hawthorne Boulevard, which is where we are right now, is completely shut off. They are just waiting for this suspect to either come out. We don't know what is going to happen, but this has been going on for over an hour. The SWAT team is here. Monterey police, sheriffs, so many government agencies coming out here to try to get to the bottom of this and get a hold of the suspect. We will continue to update you guys as we learn more. Reporting live in Torrance, Sophie Flay, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
And Sophie, as you were arriving on the scene, for what it's worth, for the community impact here, there are street closures. There is a broad perimeter that has kind of been expanding over the last hour or so. Walk us through that. Was it difficult for you to get in? Is it causing, some disruption there on the streets as you're arriving?
Mark, absolutely. It was almost impossible for us to get here. So many of these streets are blocked off. There is yellow tape everywhere. There's, shopping centers around here where people are coming to park and watch this all unfold. So yes, it is very hard to navigate the streets here in Torrance.
Yeah, can you talk about the atmosphere out there when it comes to the community reaction? I know all morning we've been hearing about shock and confusion, but that was in Monterey Park. Now this is a whole different scene in Torrance. What you said, people are parking and watching. Describe the atmosphere and the reaction that you're seeing this morning.
People are absolutely shocked and devastated from the events that occurred overnight. You can see here people are parked. They're standing here.
Hey, you guys need to get your car moved.
We are being asked to move right now. So, yep, we're gonna move right now, you guys. Okay. So we're gonna send it back to you.
Sophie, we appreciate it. Yep, understandable as that is a developing situation, perhaps a little too close to the developing situation there with that white van. That was Eyewitness News reporter Sophie Flay on the scene. And we've seen those images of the bystanders, the witnesses that are kind of in the different shopping centers taking photos, kind of watching what's going on. Law enforcement has to make sure anybody within sight of the incident needs to make sure they're back, because should there be gunfire, should that actually get to that state, it is a understandably very dangerous situation.
Absolutely, and we have been monitoring the response both here in Torrance and, as we were mentioning, in Monterey Park this morning. We had reporters out there talking to folks who are just trying to start their morning and waking up to this horrific news, just very confused as to what was happening, especially with that festival going on overnight. And they were expecting it to be another joyous day, but here we are facing another shooting in Monterey Park, and they were very devastated by the news. So it's something that we're seeing throughout Southern California, the reaction pouring in, not only in our region, but also across the world, hearing about this shooting, especially on a very, very prominent holiday for the Asian American community.
Still joining us live this morning for our continuing coverage as we stream here through our ABC 7 Los Angeles app is our law enforcement expert. I'm now being told Sheriff Jim McDonald, former Los Angeles County Sheriff Jim McDonald, still on the phone with us. Thank you for sticking with us on this developing situation as we move in there with that image from Air 7 HD. Not a lot of movement. Those SWAT members, former sheriff, are stationary, looking like they're waiting for guidance, waiting for the call to move in. We saw the drone minutes ago. Is this a situation where they're analyzing that video? Can that video be viewed in real time? Do they already know what they've seen?
Yeah, they can do it in real time. Torrance, as I mentioned earlier, tremendous capabilities in that regard. So they were able to view it in real time and maybe going into greater detail, potentially looking to enhance the video they're looking at to get greater detail. Hard to know exactly what the weight is right now without more information, but clearly they have the situation in hand. The vehicle, and under any circumstances, is not going anywhere. The posture they're taking appears that if there is someone in the van, that they are in some way incapacitated and not the threat that they might have been previously. So I can't speak in greater detail to any condition or anything within there, but they're going to exhaust all precautions in trying to be able to ensure that when they do approach and open that van, that everything has been weighed and it's the right time to do it. So you can see there in the back you have a lieutenant, a captain, and an operator discussing what is in front of them and what next steps are going to be on your feed. And so very familiar with the two gentlemen in the front there, not so much the operator, but they are among the best in the business. So confident that all the right things are being done at this time to be able to make sure everything is as safe as it can be.
I'm sure they're being very thorough, but yeah, a big question for many people who are watching this coverage. What will something happen in the next few minutes, or will it take a few hours? We don't know at this point in time. And that's the same sort of mentality we also had for the investigation earlier in Monterey Park. We had that entire street shut down, and the big question was, will this be investigated for several hours, or will this last for several days? Bruce Thomas, our other law enforcement expert, was mentioning to us that it could take days until that investigation is clear in Monterey Park. The Alhambra location, in the meantime, has been cleared.
And former Sheriff Jim McDonnell, you spoke as well about what's happening behind the scenes this morning. We have, a good perspective between Monterey Park, that investigation, and then now what's happening here in Torrance on the investigation on the ground, which is certainly developing. But that behind the scenes effort, what's happening, in offices, using the computer networks and social media, that has to be incredibly large, maybe if not larger, to learn more about this suspect. Is it a race against the clock?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a lot of people that you don't see. There's a number of people out at the scene, obviously, at both scenes or all three scenes.
All right, former Sheriff Jim McDonnell, I'm going to put you on pause. We have a news conference that's about to begin. We are going to join our viewers on air as well.
This is Eyewitness News with live breaking news.
Good afternoon. We are interrupting our 2023 Australian Open Tennis Week 1 highlights. You can continue watching it on our digital channel 7.2. Check your local listings on how to access that. But right now, we go to this breaking news.
Law enforcement is giving an update on this deadly mass shooting in Monterey Park. Let's listen in.
Update you regarding the mass shooting that occurred last night. Sheriff Luna.
Thank you, Captain. As most of you were here earlier today, it's very important for our community to be updated on something as significant and tragic as this. So we're back up here, making ourselves available to you for any questions. I think you're aware that at 11:18 this morning, we released a bulletin with a picture or an image of what we believe to be the suspect. We haven't named him. And there's a reason for that. We have a lot of resources in the Sheriff's Department, working with other agencies to make sure, again, that our priority, beyond taking care of the victims and survivors of this horrible incident, that we get this man off the streets. So I think that all of you have received this. I want to address also that there is a tactical incident that's occurring in the city of Torrance that is being covered. People have asked, is that your suspect? We don't know. As I said earlier today, we had a vehicle that was described as a white box van, I guess you'd say, a van of interest, and there's a van that looks just like what was described to us in the city of Torrance. It's a barricaded suspect situation. We are working with one of our partner agencies, the Torrance Police Department, to resolve that. We believe there is a person inside of that vehicle. We don't know their condition, but we're going to handle that in the safest manner that we possibly can to try and identify that person. Could it be our suspect? Possibly. But at this point, if we're doing our jobs correctly, we're not only looking at that situation or scenario, but we're making sure that we're looking at any and every possibility. So I do encourage our community, if they have any leads, maybe they saw the picture of this individual, to come forward with any information that they believe may help us in this very critical and important investigation. That's going to be very important. I also want to talk about the victim survivor side of this. In response to our mass shooting this morning, a victim resource center has been set up at the Langley Senior Citizen Center located at 400 West Emerson Avenue. And I want to make sure that the appropriate victims, families, friends take advantage of that resource. There are many people behind me. Some of them will speak, representatives from different agencies, and there's so many parts to this, right? The response, the medical side of it. But as we're looking for this suspect, we will not forget the victims and survivors. And it's important because you can just imagine the trauma that they've experienced, and it's our responsibility to wrap our arms around them. So representatives from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the District Attorney's Office, and the District Attorney, George Gascon, is standing here with us. The Red Cross, the Department of Health Victim Services are at the center to assist the victims, survivors, and their families. If anyone believes their relative may be a victim, please contact representatives at this Victims Resource Center that I'm talking about. And again, if you think that you have questions, you're upset, you haven't been able to locate a family member that you think's involved, please go out to this Victim Center and we will assist you. That's why we're there. At the center, we also have members from the Psychological Services Bureau, from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. And as we go hour by hour, if we see any other needs, there are multiple agencies that have contacted us. Everybody wants to help, which is amazing in this time, because we need to depend on each other in difficult circumstances like this. So with that, I am going to turn it over to the next speaker, and I'll be here for questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff Luna, and I also want to congratulate and actually give credit to the first responders, as well as our sheriff team and the city of Monterey Park, the chief of police, the many deputies, and as well as the DA's office, Mr. Gascon, and also to our elected officials that are here with us this morning representing the city of Monterey Park. I am, as you know, very heartbroken to hear of the news of what occurred with the individuals that lost their lives. But I think now we have to look at the victims, the survivors, and as the sheriff said, this is what the county does best. Help provide assistance, mental health services, any kind of relief that is possibly and legally conceivable for us to provide. We are here to support all of the families in this community and help them in their healing. It's tragic what happened, but let's also think about the people who put their lives out there on stake every single day as well to protect us, our safety, well-being, and also our physicians, the ones that I can tell you of at LAC-USC that are right now treating at least 4 of the other victims there. I also want to say that they have also devoted their service to help providing protections for all of our residents in our community. The county's Office of Emergency Management has also been providing support and leveraging mental health resources at this very traumatic time, along with the City of Monterey Park, which, as you know and you can see, are very united and very resilient. Again, a heartfelt note to the families who lost their loved ones and to those that are recovering at this time. And with the help of the public, we can help to identify the individual that was behind this incident. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. You know, this was supposed to be a moment, a time of celebration. We're celebrating Lunar New Year's, which is such an important component of many communities around LA. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to express my condolences not only to the victims' family, but the entire AIPI community. My office has multiple roles in this case. Number one, by state law, we ran a mass casualty response unit. And since very early this morning, we began to mobilize countywide resources in my office as well in order to provide services to the victim's family and to the community. And this is work that will not only, it began today, but quite frankly, will go on for months and possibly years. You know, the impact of trauma from this event goes on for a very long time. I want to thank the Sheriff Department, Sheriff Luna, and the Monterey Park Police Department for the incredible work they have done. We've had also our own law enforcement component has been here since very early on, working first with the Monterey Police Department, and we will continue to do that with the sheriff and other partners. Clearly, depending on whether an individual is arrested, we will talk about prosecution at a later date, and that is appropriate. I also want to thank the U.S. Justice Department, our U.S. Attorney, who is here today with us. Again, this is a joint effort, and depending on what the conditions are, the Bureau of Investigation is also part of this work. But what I want to make sure that we get across to our entire community is that we are a united community. When one of us is attacked, we're all here together. And regardless of what the motive was for this horrendous impact, for this horrendous event, we will continue to work together. We're here with Monterey Park, with the San Gabriel Valley, with our entire community. And we're not only here today, we will be here every day until the work is done. Thank you.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming out right now, and I want to speak to the Monterey Park community directly. Our police department, our city continues to provide protective services throughout this incident. We work with our partners both on a county, a state, and a federal level and try to resolve the situation as best we can and take our suspect into custody. The sheriff talked about the Langley Center. That's where our victim assistance has been set up. I asked that the partners in the press give those victims' families a little bit of space over there so that they can get information. You can imagine when they woke up this morning after the Lunar New Year festivals from yesterday, and they may not have found their loved one next to them in the bed or at home, and how that's affecting everybody in this community right now. I want to ensure everybody that as we get more information, we'll put it out as much as we can, and the Monterey Park Police Department is here as your partner in the community to keep it safe. Any information that people may have related to the incident, they can call the police station. We will try to get information out as soon as we get it. I have a lot of uniformed police officers that are out on the street. Every single one of them is committed to the community, and if someone in the community has a question, has a concern, is scared, that officer's out there to make sure that they're okay, and all they have to do is reach out and ask the question. I'm going to open it up to any questions. Thank you.
Sheriff, could I ask you to talk about, and again, we know that you're limited in what you can say for a number of reasons. You talked about the situation in Torrance right now, and you said that you don't, is the suspect in? You asked yourself rhetorically, and you said it's possible. Is it also possible that a person who's in there, whether it's a suspect or not, is no longer alive? Is that a possibility?
Yes, it is a possibility.
Sheriff, are you aware of anyone who's heard any gunshot